Does it sound okay now? Okay, thanks. Everyone seems so far away. I can see you back there. Hello. Please feel free to come closer to the splash zone. I promise I won't be throwing any bottles of water at you, but you are welcome to come a bit closer if you'd like. We'll get started in a minute or two. You'll notice at the top there's a link to a place where you can get access to the resources for today. So this presentation, you can follow along with me. As well, there's a number of resources that you can have as templates to use. So even if you can't connect right now, connect, you can always get these well after today. All right, I think we'll get started. There might be some people trickling in, that's all right. And I just want to let you know that if as we're going through this presentation today, you feel like this is not part of your learning plan for today, I won't be offended if you find yourself in another space. If you go through that door, however, the emergency exit, I might be a little bit worried. So that's the way. I just wanted to say welcome. We're going to be looking at Google Apps for a little while today, and share with you some ideas about how you might be able to do that with your students and in your schools. A little bit about myself. My name's Andrew Schmitt, and I'm with the Toronto District School Board. I'm an instructional leader, and I work with about half of the board with elementary schools, so that works out to be around 300 schools or so. I have yet to be in maybe even a quarter of those. But that is where I am focusing my work the last couple of years, and just working with teachers on a number of different ways to integrate technology into their classroom. And there's a few other things that I do as well for fun or on the side. I just want to let you know that I am not a ninja per se when it comes to working with inquiry and working with Google Apps. I have a lot of ideas to share, but I know that there's tons of expertise out there as well. And so what I've tried to do is bring some of those ideas together with the work that I've been doing to be able to share with you today. And please feel free to share these resources as well with teachers that are in your network as well. This is not a how-to session, and good thing it's not, because in a room like this, it would be really hard for me to get around and assist you along the way. What I've tried to do throughout the presentation is provide some little links to resources that are supporting or allow for you to make copies of the templates that I'm going to be going through today. So everything that I'm showing today is accessible to you. And not only that, I've made blank copies of what I've presented today so that you can literally take it and use it as a skeleton and put your own ideas in there. And you'll see that as we go through the presentation today. I just wanted to mention something at the beginning. I've been delving into this book, Embedded Formative Assessment by Dylan William, and I just think there's this idea, and I'm sure you find this as well, there's so many ideas out there and there's so much going on that sometimes it gets very overwhelming. And he actually references that in terms of formative assessment and how we change our practice, and kind of just indicates that there's really, if you start to try and do too many things, you have the opportunity or the potential of exploding your program and actually not being as meaningful in the work that you're doing. And so my challenge for you today then is to think about trying one thing. So what is that one thing from today's presentation, or that one thing from the day that you're going to take back with you and you're going to try and implement with your students or with your staff? And maybe by using that as your lens, you'll find that the work that you're doing will be a little bit more geared and focused as opposed to a little spread out. And one of those try one things for you might be something that somebody in your building or sitting next to you has been doing all along. But this is your personal journey. And so whatever it is that you identify with, take it and run with it and go. I just thought to make this a little bit more interactive in terms of the space, if you are jumping online with me during this presentation, So the bit.ly's down here at the bottom, and you just have to click on the presentation tab, and it should link to this presentation. But I've opened it up so that you can actually insert comments throughout, and I'd be more than happy to connect with you electronically on some of the ideas that we're sharing. So if I jump out, I'll just show there. We have a couple of people in here already, but if we're on this slide and you have a question, you can add a comment to it and then post that comment, and other people can interact in this presentation. This is actually one of the ways that Google Presentations is used by a number of teachers to be able to be connected with their students electronically. Also, feel free to connect with me on Twitter, or I think I have my email address posted somewhere in this presentation as well, so I'd be more than happy to connect with you. Okay, so let's get into it. So when do we start asking questions and exploring ideas? So I have 3 beautiful lovelies at home, and they've taught me a lot about this, and it starts right away, and it starts full on. Daddy, why is that? Daddy, 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 daddy. And that curiosity just continues. And I wanted to share with you one of my daughter's inventions. It's on paper, but she invented an airplane. And as she was explaining it to me, I had to capture what some of her thoughts were. Well, she's the pilot, but she's using her arms to help steer, and her butterfly head and butterfly wings, and of course there's a dog tail, horse legs, and then my favorite is, well, it's rainbow stripes because we are in the sky after all, Daddy. So this idea, this curiosity, this wonder, how things work, starts at such a young age. And really that's what inquiry is all about. It's about learning through inquiry is both a teaching method and a skill for students that harnesses natural curiosity and wonder. So it's that natural curiosity and wonder that we want to capitalize in the inquiry process. I have a video that I like to show you that I think helps get the message across.
Imagine the awesomest thing you can, like an automatic grilled cheese maker, or a time machine with an automatic grilled cheese maker. Now imagine who's going to invent it. Him? Glasses here? Whoever they are? Or maybe her? But how do kids like these become the types of people that do things like this? Maybe we should ask this guy.
Knowledge is heavy. Sometimes it's a limit to have new ideas. That's the problem with the old schooling, because they were teaching answers. I believe questions are probably more important today than the answers.
Erno's cube is a question waiting to be answered. And when the right person finds the right question, something amazing happens. They start seeing the world as it truly is. Not a place to be memorized, but a place to be figured out, flipped, turned, twisted, and ultimately made better, forever. Today, she may be an octopus, but help kids like her fall in love with problem solving, and they will embark on journeys to become scientists, artists, engineers, designers, inventors, or something no one's ever been before, but you can bet we're gonna need. That's why moments like this, go, and this, and this, and especially this, are so important. Because there are companies to found, planets to walk on, time machines to invent, a future to be made amazing. We may not know what it's going to look like, but we know who's going to do it.
So I think it's that idea of giving our students those opportunities to be creative thinkers.
Imagine the awesome...
Hold on a second. So I guess the question that comes up is, how do we harness that curiosity and wonder, and how would we make that happen in our classrooms? And I think this quote sums up a lot about what inquiry is, that idea that it is a process that's used to solve problems, create new knowledge, etc. And I want to mention this resource because I use this quite quite a lot, and there's a link in the presentation to that resource, the IQ A Practical Guide to Inquiry. And there's a few other resources that I'm going to mention throughout as well that I've found very, very useful in terms of bringing the reality of inquiry into the classroom. There's a lot of models out there for inquiry. So we have one that comes from the ministry document, the Capacity Building Series, that has sort of different phases. You'll also notice in the revised social studies curriculum that you have a similar one. And then the Ontario Library Association. So from my background as a teacher librarian, I sort of latched onto this one, and I'm using this one to propel the presentation forward for today. Here are those sources that I was talking about. So TDSB has come up with or developed a couple of documents that I found very useful. A lot of blackline masters, and a lot of different ideas are in there that you can just take and use right away. And so it's looking at how we can turn these blackline masters potentially into Google apps that can be used in a variety of ways with our students. So really it got the question started about how can GAF and inquiry work together, and how can it be used effectively with my students? And how many of you are familiar with the SAMR model? So there's a number of resources that have been developed by OSAPAC, and I've linked to those. And there's a quick video that you're welcome to watch as well on explaining what SAMR is. But really it's looking at how you can use technology in ways that can either enhance the learning, so you can substitute it or you can augment it, or how you can transform the learning. And we're all on a continuum in different areas of how we're using technology. But the idea is that we want to be looking at effective ways of using technology. So there's nothing wrong with substitution. It's just asking those questions to say, what more can I be doing with the technology that I have and with the access that I have to be trying to move in other ways to transform the way that teaching is happening in my classroom. So we'll come back to that at the end about the SAMR model and some of these ideas that we're going through today. So this is a bit of a table of contents. So if at this point you want to just jump around in the presentation and take a look at some of the examples that I will be sharing in a linear fashion, please feel free to do that. But this is also a great place for you to come back to later on when you're looking for something in particular. So let's take a look at that first phase of the inquiry process. And that's looking at initiating inquiry, choosing a topic, developing questions. And this is a really crucial phase in the inquiry process, because how do you get students to ask effective questions? How do you get them to create something that isn't just a Googleable answer? That's something that requires them to do some investigation. And how many of you recognize the Q chart? You might have this exact one in your building or have seen replicas of it. And essentially what I did is I took this Q chart and turned it into a template or turned it into a digital copy. And this is what you're going to see throughout the presentation, some digital copies. You'll notice on the right that there's a little speech bubble that will link you to a template and that will also take you to the live version of this example. So we're going to be jumping in and out of the presentation at this point and looking at some of these ideas in real time. So notice that this is done in a Google Drawing, and a Google Drawing allows for flexible use of space, a bit different than a Google document. And taking these questions, and I also found that there were headings underneath each one of them to help get that idea of what really are you targeting when you're asking that question. So in terms of is, that's referring to present. And in terms of what, we're referring to an event. So if you ask a what is question, you're referring to something that is happening at this time. And so looking at this example here, I thought, well, this is a great way for students to start to try and develop those questions. And we can take those and record them off to the side and see if we can start to refine our questioning to get a little bit more towards that higher order questioning abilities. So as I was developing this presentation, I was thinking about that, and that's the title of this presentation comes out as a question, because as I was doing this presentation, I was kind of thinking about, well, let's approach this from an inquiry point of view. How might I use these? So what are the the possibilities and how, using your imagination, can you interpret what I'm sharing with you for your context. That's why I chose a how might question for this title. And once again, remember, when you click on the template, what it's going to ask you to do is, would you like to make a copy of this document? And then when you click Make a Copy, it will automatically make a blank version of this for you that you can then share or you can then work in as well. If I don't close some of these tabs now, I'll have about 800 of them open by the end, okay? So let's continue on. So that's the cue chart example. And I'm sure this graphic organizer is well known by many of you, the KWL chart. Now, the power of using Google, meaning that this is a shareable document. So it doesn't just sit with one student or in one account. That idea of it being in the cloud and the opportunity for multiple people to be able to go in there and put in what they know, what they want to know, and then to do that final piece, what I learned, which is usually that piece that always I forget to do myself. But it becomes a very powerful, powerful way of generating those ideas from a larger group. The brainstorming piece. Now, there's lots and lots of graphic organizers out there, and really all I did with this one is started with a blank canvas and thought, okay, if I'm going to start brainstorming for this topic, let me just use a Google drawing and let's just start throwing some ideas into that drawing. And I'll jump into the example so we can take a little bit of a look at how we go about doing that. Notice that it gets long and skinny the more that you expand the page, the bigger that you get it. You can always zoom in, though. There's a zoom in tool over here on the side. But really, I started with this question, how might Google Apps be used throughout the inquiry process? And I started to just do some searching online to see what was there. Now, how many of you have used the research tool in Google before? Okay, so for those of you that have, you know the power of it. For those who don't, I'll just show you briefly that in the Tools area, you can click on Research, and that's going to open up a search bar on the side, allowing you to search the internet directly inside your Google presentation or document or drawing. And it allows you to pull those images or those links directly in without having to leave the browser. Now, it is a Google search, and so you have to be aware that as a teacher, if you're using this, that they will be able to do a Google search in this area on any topic. So there is some discretion to be used. One of the things that I really like to promote, though, with my students is when you do an image search, if you were to do that you can actually filter those images by free-to-use, share, or modify. And so that way you're filtering that image search a little bit and using those images that are allowed to be used in terms of the work that you're doing. I just wanted to mention that it's really hard looking at a brainstorming document to understand where things are and where everything originated from. So in the presentation, I made I think a 30-second screencast of the evolution of how this went. So if you watch that little video, it'll show you how I started with the question, started pulling things in, drawing lines, moving things around. So you get a sense of how that development took place, and then maybe you can think of ways that you could incorporate that with the work of your students as well. Here's another graphic organizer. This one comes from the Research Success at Your Library, TDSB resource. And it's just looking at how you can use the sequence of events to help you understand the steps that are needed in order to get from point A to point B. And I know for a lot of our students, they need this type of reinforcement in order for them to be able to see everything that needs to be done. This could be attached to calendar items. This could be attached to dates, right, so that they can actually track what it is they're doing and where they're going with their inquiry. So I was thinking a little bit about how you take the ideas of your inquiry and how you track those ideas. And I came up with the idea of this spreadsheet, this Google Sheet for an inquiry check brick. And so it's an opportunity for you to share this template with your students, where they can identify their product title, what they're doing, And then I also thought it's a great opportunity for you then as the teacher to put in the success criteria that you've developed with your students at the beginning of that inquiry project and then going through and working with it. Now you'll notice that what I've done is I've put 2 columns, one for students and one for teachers, and either of these could be removed depending on how you'd like to use this. So I was thinking, well, this could be a great self-reflection tool for students to be able to say as they go through that they use topic-specific vocabulary. And what I've done is created a drop-down menu here for them to be able to identify, and you'll notice some of these qualifiers, to identify how they feel they've done in this area, attach a level to their work. Then as the teacher, if I'm using it in this way, I can go in, see where the students are identifying where they're at, and also give them some feedback on where I see them being. And so we can have some informed conversations about how they're assessing their work and what they're doing and how I'm, as the teacher, assessing their work. So not sure how to do that drop-down menu thing. Once again, there's a little hint down there at the bottom on how you can go about creating your own drop-down menu. And that can be customized to say yes, no, to say true, false, whatever it is, to have a number of different responses along the way. It's that idea that you want to be able to check in on their work as they're going through that process of developing those questions so that it sets them up for success as we move through the other phases of inquiry. Google Forms, I know that when Google Apps for Education was introduced to TDSB, I would say Google Forms was the one that took off the most because everyone was saying, wow, we can collect data like crazy, and it's all going to be automatically graphed for us and all those types of things. And that's true, but there's looking at ways that you can use Google Forms in a few different ways. And one of the ideas that I had was to use it to agree to the success criteria that you've established for an inquiry project. And so looking at this as the teacher, just developing, taking those ideas about what those success criteria will be, and having students agree or disagree with that. So it's really hard to hear from every single student in your class when you're doing something like this. And so to try and get a general consensus on what it is that would make you successful at the end of your inquiry, this would be a great way to do that. So students go in, they agree or disagree, and then as the teacher, I get that back-end spreadsheet that allows me to see some of those disagrees. And obviously, if I'm seeing that from a number of different students, then maybe we need to go in and modify the success criteria or clarify it a little bit in order for us to have that consensus and to be able to move forward in the inquiry process. So let's take a look at the next phase, which is that investigating phase, designing the plan, selecting the information, formulating the focus. And really, this is about helping give them ways to narrow down that search with billions of websites that are out there and all sorts of information. How can we get that focused? So this example is really, once again, it's taken from those TDSB documents. So the one is Imagine the Learning, and just turning it into that digital format. And remember, there's no reason to do this if it's a substitution activity. If really all they're going to do is just write down their ideas, then fine, leave it as a paper task. But if you're going to take that resource, and it's a shared resource so that more than one student can get in there, or if you're going to use that research tool where they can actually pull material directly into this and cite it directly into this graphic organizer, that would be a great reason to use this in a digital format because you are doing more than just writing on that paper. And the ability to share that is, once again, one of the key things, I think, to using this. A checklist for evaluating a website. So when I look at this one, I just think there's so much out there in terms of how do we help students know if that website that they're looking at is a trusted one, is a site that is useful to them. So another Google Sheet that I developed with the help of some of those resources, and it's using that checkbox as well, but it's just helping go through what some of those ideas are in terms of look-fors for that website. The All My Sources example that I have here utilizes the idea of the table of contents. So, and this I've seen used in so many different ways, the table of contents tool, where students start one Google document maybe for that subject, and every class they put a heading and they create a new entry where they take their notes or where they put their ideas in. And this is the same case for inquiry as well. And I thought, well, let's use it in terms of sources. So how could we organize those different sources that students are finding? So creating a template for them where you're saying, okay, so let's, even if we try and distinguish between your book resources, your online sources, other sources, that helps to structure the work that they're doing. And you can jump into that one and take a look at it as well. But going a little bit further, I know that that's very open-ended for many of our students, so I thought, once again, let's take a look at how we could use Google Forms to help scaffold this idea for our students. So when we want to have a record of our sources, for this form, what I did is thought, okay, well, let's take a look then at all those different sources, and we know that there's different ways of gathering the citations for those, and as we click through this resource, the questions change based on the source. So we know that books, we're looking for the author, the title, publication, etc. Maybe Dewey Call number. But if we're looking at online reference sources, we're going to be looking for different things. We're going to maybe be needing that web address, the date of access, the copyright date, etc. So that helps to scaffold that process of gathering those sources for students. And I think that depending on where your students are at, either one of those resources would be useful as a way to help them keep track of everything. I know, speaking from my own experience, that was the case when I do research projects. You know, you're trying to keep track of where everything is, where you got all that information from. Another formative assessment project along the way here, using this idea of the student scoring chart. So as you're going through this process, you're still going to want to be checking in with your students. You're still going to want to think of ways to find out what's going on along that journey of inquiry. And so just using that idea of the rating scale, so I understand the purpose of the assignment and how it will be evaluated, right? So you want to make sure that along the way they have an idea of where they're going and what their target is so that they can be successful and achieve that. So lots of different ideas put into that form. I wanted to mention that with Google Forms, it's hard to share those because there's not a view-only option. So if anyone would like to actually have like a copy of any of these forms that we go along the way, just let me know, and then I can share that with you. Okay? So taking a look at that third part of the inquiry process, the processing piece, where we're analyzing, we're evaluating ideas, where we're organizing and synthesizing and trying to pull things together. And Venn diagrams can be very useful for that. And once again, so this is just taking that well-known graphic organizer that we have and creating a digital version of that and trying to pull things together. Another one that I found useful was looking at the cause and effect fishbone graphic organizer. I thought that, you know, there's a lot of potential in terms of helping students to understand what the causes might be for a desired effect. And it can be used directly for, you know, that final product like I have here. Or it could be looking at how within that inquiry, taking a look at some of those products or some of those ideas that they're researching and figuring out what all of those causes were in order to get to that final effect. The final part of the inquiry process, looking at that, is that presentation piece. It's looking at how they can extend and transfer their learning. And a Google presentation is one of the best ways, I think, of doing that. And Sandra Chow, a good friend and a teacher in our board, I just borrowed an example of one of the things that she was doing with her students where they were investigating a planet. And the idea of it being collaborative, so it's not owned by just one person. The ease of pulling in images, of incorporating images and being able to cite the references directly in that presentation, how you can link to sources directly in your presentation, and how you can use that research tool, all make a Google presentation an amazing way to be able to share that final piece for inquiry. Another example that I saw of this is in another teacher's classroom. Nicole Huang was, her students were using Google Presentation as a science journal. So on the first page, they created their title page. And then on the second slide, they had listed what the success criteria were for their science journal as they were going through some of those different ideas that they wanted to bring in. And then putting some prompting or guiding questions at the beginning so that that's something that they could continue to use throughout their science journal as they're progressing through. And then the student created their own table of contents. So as they were going through, they were linking to those slides through this table of contents page so they could easily navigate to those different parts of the presentation, in quotation marks, presentation, and to be able to get that, that overall look at what they've been doing in that course throughout the year. And then in that journal entry, looking at bringing in images and bringing in text. And then I talked about that commenting feature, so you can see that the teacher's gone in here and put in some comments, and then students can actually have sidebar conversations with their teacher as well, without disturbing the content or the text. Looking at just putting a rubric in place in a digital format, and you'll notice that there's some highlighted areas on this rubric. And all that was me putting in some comments as reminders to myself as to what I'm specifically looking for in those areas. So I know that when I'm looking at knowledge and understanding that there's a certain criteria that I'm looking for to help me as the teacher just remember what it is I'm doing. I wanted to show you this rubric assessment for learning piece, and we're going to take a few minutes to look at this in more depth. But essentially what happens is, with this rubric, when it's filled out, it will generate a personalized Google document for that student. So the template for this document looks like this. So you'll notice that there are a number of different carets around the text in this document. And essentially what that is they're markers that allow a script in Google to be able to plop the information from the form into this Google Doc. And some of you are thinking, how do I do that? Okay, so I made a little video on how to actually do that. But if we take a look at the rubric, you'll see that some of those questions, knowledge and understanding, and knowledge understanding qualifier, those question headings are what were used. So you'll see the KU qualifier are what are used to actually pull that information from the form and put it into this Google document. You'll notice on the form as well that you have to have an email address in order for this to be sent directly to the students. You can have one generated and you can share it, but if you have email turned on for your students, it's just an easy way of getting that directly to them. And I know that I'm not necessarily, was never the best at getting that assessment piece that back to the students right away, but knowing that if I use this Google form, that they can get that assessment piece from me in a timely manner, like literally like that, is a pretty powerful vehicle in terms of us staying connected in the classroom. And there's so many applications for how this Google script could be used across your entire program. But I thought I would just focus on how that could create personalized assessments for your students. And just think of it as such a powerful and fantastic tool. This Google document for group assessment, it's actually a drawing, and the reason why I chose it is because you can quickly go into the document and color or shade in the different squares just by using some of the features that are built into the drawing. Whoops, I've zoomed in too far, so now it looks like, wow. Okay, so if I click on this box, I can shade it in. I'll do a brighter color so we can see that. And students can go in and do that. And there's the piece that I really like about this is it's that idea that we're working in a group and we have to be able to share our ideas as a group, and we have to be able to work together as a group and make that learning personal. And so just at the bottom here, some of those pieces that I think are really, really beneficial in terms of a teacher when you're doing those group works is, our team was successful at and why, and our team could be stronger if and why. So just some prompting questions to be able to get a lens into what's going on into the work that group is doing. Is a very powerful way to be using Google Apps. So anyone feeling overwhelmed at this point? A lot of ideas being thrown at you, templates, oh my gosh, what are we doing? Well, I just wanted to remind you, it's that idea of that try one thing. And the idea that, hopefully with some of these templates that you can just take and use, that might be a great way for you to try and implement Google Apps in your classroom and in the inquiry process. But also just remember that idea of the SAMR model, where you're looking at the way that you're using it and asking some questions on what you can do to move forward. And one of the things that I found was helpful was just some questions, maybe some guiding questions to help you think about, okay, so where am I and how do I move the work that I'm doing? And so these questions are actually on the SAMR model. But then these are some ideas along the side about just maybe some ways to identify where you're at. And I know that there are a lot of challenges in our schools in TDSB in terms of the reliability of the network or being able to get primary students to remember their student number and a password that changes for security reasons. And so there's this idea that you always have to have something in place in case the technology isn't available. And what I want to try and recommend to you is that you don't craft your technology-infused work with this technology as optional idea. Because then really what you're saying is, if the technology is optional for this, then really you're not using the technology to the fullest potential that it could be. Because you're already saying, oh, well, we can always do this another way. And so if you're looking at using technology in a really powerful way, then you can't concede on technology being optional. Your work will come to a stop. Now, okay, so what, we're all going to sit in our classroom and just twiddle our thumbs? No. We have lots of other things that can be done that don't require that rich technology-infused activity. So take that activity that requires you to be redefining what it is you're doing in your classroom, put it here and keep testing the Wi-Fi until it comes on, and then take this activity and do that until it's ready. And I know there's lots of logistical challenges when it comes to signing out mobile carts and getting time in a computer lab and all that stuff, but you will find a way to make it work when you know that when it is that essential for them to be using the technology with that task. So that's my recommendation to you. I know as a teacher I was always doing this technology as optional piece, and the more and more I think about it, the more I realize that that's the wrong way to go. Make it essential, and then you're going to figure out how, and you're going to figure out how to troubleshoot, you're going to figure out how to make it work, and it's going to be an outstanding piece of work in the end. One of the things that I find so powerful about using Google Apps and working with teachers across the system is this idea that it has a low floor and a high ceiling. It does not take a lot for you to be able to open up a Google Doc and to start typing. right? And it doesn't take a lot for you to click the blue button in the corner of what it is that you're doing and to share that with a colleague or to share that with your students. Doesn't take a lot to do that. But then, as you start to work with it, you start to see, oh my goodness, there's a lot that this tool can do that I haven't even scratched the surface on. And that's what makes it such a powerful tool. And that's why it's transforming so much of the teaching and learning in the classrooms that I'm working in and the teachers that are adopting this, because there is this unlimited potential and this opportunity for you to get support in that as well. There's so many resources out there, and I hear this all the time. Yeah, but I don't have. You can't let that be a barrier from stopping you to do the things that you want to do in your classroom. You're going to figure out ways to get around it. You're going to advocate however you can. You're going to apply for grants. You're going to do whatever it is that you can in order to make the learning happen in your classroom. I wanted to point out some resources. So as a department, we've started to develop some resources, and I would not say that this is an exhaustive resource. It's in its infancy, so we're trying to build in some more. But you'll notice that there's the Learn the app. So we've tried to link to some different resources that are already out there, and we'll be starting to put examples of teacher and student work on that site as well to give you an idea or give people an idea of how these different apps can be used. But you could also just YouTube any of these things that you've seen today, and you'll have a 12-year-old child explaining how to do something that would have taken you forever to do. Another resource that we have in TDSB is we have our digital lead learners. So about 100 teachers across the system that run professional learning on our department's behalf. And we have some after-school workshop resources on Google Apps, but we also had something called the 2015 Marketplace, where we had all 100 of those teachers sharing just little simple ideas of how they're using technology with their students and linking to their resources. So that's all off of this website. It just happened a couple of weeks ago, so all the things that are there are pretty current. And a lot of great people sharing the work that they've been doing with their schools. This idea of when the right person finds the right question really propels that idea of inquiry in the classroom. And I can't think of a better video to sum this up than this one of Jack and Dreka. So let's just take a minute to watch.
I may be a scientist, but as you can see, I'm only 15. My name is Jack Andreka. I have developed a paper sensor for the detection of pancreatic, ovarian, and lung cancer. It's 168 times faster, over 26,000 times less expensive than the current gold standard of detection, and it has close to 100% accuracy at diagnosing these diseases. At the age of 3 is actually when I got interested in science. A close family friend succumbed to pancreatic cancer, so every single day that's my motivation. Once I had come up with this idea in my high school biology class, I emailed 200 different professors. I got 199 rejections, but Dr. Anirban, my HR, gave me the chance, and I finally got the lab space I needed to do this project.
The winner of the $75,000 Gordon E. Moore Award in the category of Medicine and Health Sciences.
Intel ISEF is the largest pre-college science fair, and it was just insane to be able to win this award at age 15. That's what I really want to change about society is regardless of your age, your gender, your ethnicity, it's just your ideas that count, and to not get lost from the message of helping people.
So I know that not all of our students are going to win a major competition because they went and investigated a question and saw an issue in this world that needed to be solved. But I think it's a great example of that perseverance, about the support that's needed in order for our students to be able to move forward and to be able to be successful in the inquiries that they're doing. And when we pose those real problems and when we give them opportunities to explore, to investigate, to collaborate within the programs that we're doing, I think that we can really see some amazing things happen. I'm sure you have stories that you can share. I know there are tons of stories out there about the power that inquiry has with the students, and the idea that as teachers we can support them along the way using Google Apps for Education, I think, is really powerful. So I just wanted to thank you for coming and for taking the time to share, for me to share with you how to use Google Apps. And this last quote that I find so powerful, once again from that Embedded Formative Assessment book, is that not because we're not good enough, but because we can be even better. I think that's a really, really key idea. And the fact that you're here today and you're here for all of this professional learning is a testament to that. Once again, if at any point you want to connect with me on any more of these ideas, I'd be more than happy to. I'll be around for the rest of the day. I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference, and thank you very much.